Welcome to another video for WinBidPro version 16 by GDS Estimating. In this video I'd like to talk about curtain wall systems, and in particular systems that have pressure plates and face covers. So I've drawn an elevation here. So version 16 has a lot of new features for curtain wall that help calculate splice points or splice gaps and locations and all that stuff better. So this is an improvement, and I want to make sure everyone knows kind of what these changes are and how they work. So I've drawn an 8-panel elevation that's 300 inches wide by 300 inches tall. So you'll notice down here at the bottom there's already 35 job alerts just from drawing this elevation here. So if I click that, it brings us to the screen with all the tab with all the job alerts. So anything that's an error is bad and needs to be fixed. We have job alert warnings that those aren't as severe, obviously, but those can be taken care of as well. But the error means there's something definitely wrong. So in this case, we see all these different part numbers, and we know they're verticals because they all have the V beginning with their label ID. We know that it's longer, the cut sizes are longer than the stock lengths, so that's a problem. So a stock length can't fill a complete cut size, which means that we need to add splices to our elevation. So in order to add splices, I first want to add some horizontals so I kind of know where a splice should land. So to do that, I'm going to go to the equally spaced horizontals. You'll notice that we have all the panels kind of highlighted in green, and that's because every panel selected. That's what the little check mark means as well. And this all button is kind of selected here. So that means I've got all panels selected. So now really all I have to do is tell it how many horizontals I want. So let's say 5. And then I can tab over and click Add. So now it's added the equally spaced horizontals in all panels. So now we can go over to our Splice tab. And to figure out where we want it to go, let's see. Let's say I want to splice at that 198 3/16 horizontal. So I'm going to click Add. And once again, all panels are selected, or all verticals in this case are selected. So I can deselect a vertical, and you'll notice down here it had an 8 before, and when I unselected it, removed it. So I can reselect it, and now it adds the 8 back. So you can actually type in panel numbers, or in this case vertical numbers, and separate them by commas, and you wouldn't have to click on them all. So there's 2 different ways to do it. So that was 198 3/16. So I'm going to put in that height for my splice, and then I'm going to click Add. So now you'll notice that it's deselected all the verticals, and just to make it easier to see, we're going to go back to the elevations, and you'll see here that we have some lines showing the different breaks. So in curtain wall, and let's go to the framing system to kind of illustrate this better. I'm going to zoom back out. So we're going to go to the framing system. There's some settings that need to be made. So the curtain wall category, that's more for just searching for and filtering on curtain wall systems and all that. The main thing we need to do for curtain wall systems is make sure has face covers and has pressure plates is selected. And those 2 things are selected here, which is good. And then we can go to components, and since we spliced the verticals, we're going to go to the vertical assembly here and look at the parts and the details for that. So we'll notice here, this is our vertical. It's got a face cap, it's got a pressure plate with screws, and it's got a back member. So those are the key components, right, for a curtain wall system. So in our program, and this actually isn't set properly for these parts, so we want to make sure the face cover where it says member is set for face cap, and then we want to make sure the pressure plate is set for pressure plate. So the other members are going to be back members, whether it's a filler, if it's a 2-piece, 1-piece, whatever, that's just the back member. The main thing for splicing is it needs to know the back member, it needs to know the pressure plate, and it needs to know the face cap. So Now we can go to the Splices tab. So this is where you would add hardware for splices. So if there's a splice sleeve that we need to add that. And I'm going to type in the word splice here and see what comes up. So here's a splice. See, I don't know if this is the right one for this system, but I'm going to pick it anyway. So this is kind of an example of what we're doing. Now, chances are you only need one splice sleeve per splice, so we're just going to leave the quantity of one. But if there's a part in a splice that needs 2 of that part, we can change the quantity. The spacing thing kind of applies to different parts, not really splices, so we're gonna ignore that setting for now. The main thing that we want to look at here too, aside from making sure we have all our parts in there, is there might be some screws, right? So let's go ahead and add some screws. That's an example of where you'd use the quantity. So I'm just going to pick kind of any old screw at this point. So let's pick that screw, and then I'm going to say I need 2 of that screw per splice. So that's kind of the part configuration for our splices. And again, this is just for a vertical in this particular system. So now I want to hit configure splices. So this is where we can tell the program what type of gap there is and what the offset is. So our little diagram here is showing us that the offset, or that the back member, is kind of the main reference point, I guess, for a splice. Now it's showing us that the splice for the pressure plate is 1 inch from the center of the back member splice, and then the face cover splice is an extra inch from the back member. So they're all offset by 1 inch. Now we can actually change the direction, and I can say it's down for both of these. So remember, the back member is kind of the reference, and the face cover and pressure plate go off of that. So each one of these have a 1/2 inch gap. If that needs to be changed for some reason, then this is where you change it. And if the offset needs to be different, this is where you change it. So you'll notice now that the splices should be below. If I go back and we say OK, now we're going to go save this, and then we're going to actually look at, okay, so here's a good example. So I was working on the vertical assembly, right? So you'll notice the difference now between the vertical assembly and the jams. So the wall jams had the original splice where the back member was at the bottom of the horizontal, and then the other 2 pressure plate and face cover were above. So I switched it so the back member, you know, it was going below for the vertical material. So let's check that again, and you'll see what happens when we do just one of those. That was the right jam we were looking at. So let's edit the right jam. And without editing parts, we should be able to manipulate the splice configuration. So let's make sure that happens. And we're going to say OK. We're going to save. So now you'll notice that that moved down as well. So that is kind of the situation with splices, and all that control is brand new in version 16. So it looks like we still have one job alert. Let's see, has pressure plate is not checked for framing system. Oh yeah, so this was in the, you'll notice it usually tells us the elevation, but it's probably this one. So it's giving us a warning that that I fixed. But anyway, that was for a different elevation. So for this elevation, number 2, you see how this works. And you'll see that the left wall jam is still having the splices above the back member. So that gives you an idea of how you can manipulate the splices and the configuration and the joints and the parts and all that. So those are the key kind of criteria. It also gives you an idea how to fix that error message that says cut sizes are longer than a stock length. So So all that's important with getting your curtain wall systems to cut correctly and to look correctly on the screen with splicing. And that's it for now. Thanks.